All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar. Today's webinar is Become a Special Agent for BEC. Business email compromise has disastrous consequences for victims, from financial losses due to fraudulent payments, stolen proprietary information and extortion demands, to reputation damage resulting from compromised business systems. Today, we're going to discuss BEC, how it connects to criminal activity, new emerging tactics from threat actors, the latest threats we've uncovered, and even a recent case study. Leading us through this conversation today is Tanya Dudley, VP and Chief Information Security Officer here at Cofense. And from the United States Secret Service, joining us today are Michael Johns, Director of Private and Public Sector Outreach for Cybersecurity, Abigail Terrell, Special Agent, and Stephen Doherty, a financial investigator and forensic analyst. Welcome, Tanya, Michael, Abigail, and Stephen, and thank you for giving us your time and expertise today. Just a couple of housekeeping topics before we get started. You can ask questions at any time during the session using the Q&A window that you see in your console, but we'll also save time at the end of the discussions today for open Q&A. So any questions that pop up throughout, we may answer some of those as we go along, or we may save those just for the end. This webinar is being recorded, and everybody here today will receive a link to the recording once we've concluded. And finally, on the right side of your console, you'll find links to some mostly ungated educational resources that you can peruse and consume at any time. So please click, review, and enjoy. And with all of that out of the way, I will pass things over to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Chrissy. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm so excited that we have our special guest with us today. I know we've done several BEC, Business Email Compromise, webinars in the past, but when I saw these guys speak in December at a tabletop exercise, I was really excited to be able to see that we actually have some people that are really fighting to how we can defend against this, right? And really start to defend against this threat that many organizations are dealing with today. So real quick, I'm just gonna talk about who Cofense is in case you haven't heard of us. This is the first time you're joining us. And then I'm going to go over a few of the BEC resources that we have provided on our website. And then I'll hand it over to the Secret Service team to go through what it is that they do and how they are helping us fight this, this threat. And then we'll wrap it up with Q&A. So anytime along the way, if you have any questions, like Chrissy mentioned, put it in the Q&A and we'll get to those at the end. So just real quick, who Cofense is. So we are an email security organization. We have products that help you defend against phishing threats that land in your inbox that have already made it through your defenses, you know, from training your users on how to recognize those and to report those, getting them off to your security operations team, having products that can help them manage and quickly mitigate those threats as they land in your inbox. And then through all of this, we have our intelligence product, our human vetted phishing threats, IOCs, indicators that can help you identify those in your environment and get those mitigated. So real quick before I hand it off to the team, so we have on our Cofense website, the image on the left-hand side is our BEC Resource Center that we have. If you can find that under our resources on the Cofense webpage. There's lots of great content there on, you know, what you can do about BEC, some videos that our principal threat advisor, Ronnie Topazowski, who is very well known in this community defending against the business email compromise. And then on the right-hand side in our SegMist database, so we have lots of images because oftentimes I feel when I'm talking to organizations or individuals about, what a real fish looks like, oftentimes we don't ourselves get one, right? So what does that look like? How can we help people identify what those are? When it comes to BEC, it's one of those things that we can't really simulate the same way that a threat actor is because there's no link, no attachment in there. So we have lots of images in there. I often speak to some of our PhishMe operators who will take those images, put it out in a newsletter to let their teams know, hey, look out for these types of emails that are coming from you. When it comes to educating your organization. I will also recommend having the most senior leader in your organization, in an all hands meeting, in your team meetings, remind individuals that they are not going to ask them to get gift cards or do any activities on their behalf, right? So just hearing it from that individual at the top, making that statement can go a long way. Also, as you're onboarding new employees, we often see that new employees haven't heard that message, or they think, this is somebody very important in the organization. I need to do what they're asking me to do, without knowing how they typically communicate, right? So also when you're onboarding new employees, remind them that these individuals that are in the senior leadership team are not going to ask them to, buy gift cards, take actions on their behalf. So now I'm going to turn it over to you, to the Secret Service team, and lead us through your discussion today.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Cofence, for the opportunity to speak to this great audience. My name is Mike Johns. I lead the Secret Services outreach to the private and public sector, and I have the privilege to introduce two great resources individuals here at what we call our Global Investigative Operations Center. That's kind of the backbone for our cyber-enabled fraud investigations throughout our 42 cyber fraud task forces across the continental U.S. So without further ado, we have Abby Terrell as a special agent here, specializes in BEC, and Steve Doherty, who's a financial analyst and also works on the BEC desk. Steve's joining us from Pretoria, South Africa. And Abby, if you could kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to discuss business email compromise schemes. They continue to be a major threat for the U.S. economy. I'm sure that most of you are familiar at some level with these business email compromise schemes. They are sophisticated scams that target individuals who are transferring funds, and they will do their best to intercept communication and redirect wiring instructions for those funds. As the schemes and technology evolve, so do the scams associated with them, but they continue to be a significant loss to individuals and companies. In 2021, IC3, the Internet Crimes Complaint Center, received nearly 20,000 reports of revolving compromised accounts with losses of nearly $2.4 billion. And I have to say as well, these numbers are underreported, something that needs to happen more. But this information and like what to do once you are a victim of a BEC, reporting it is critical, and the sooner the better, because time is money. Once a wire transfer is made, the funds are quickly dispersed, which makes recovery difficult as time passes. And then, so just kind of broad overview of the process. And again, especially with the rise of COVID and there's more and more online communication and emails that have happened, and teleworking and just virtual communication has become a bit even bigger part of our lives. And with that, there's also an opportunity for scammers to exploit. And so because we all are in our email inboxes every single day, emails are a normal part of our lives, and they use that very effectively. So an employee may receive an email correspondence as related to regular and expected business operations, and it's then used. Cyber criminals will then infiltrate the email addresses and set up unauthorized rules. And sometimes they will also then spoof domains. So they'll create a domain with a lookalike, with a letter or a number that's different or added to a legitimate company, and set up an email account with that and use that to then send fraudulent wire instructions, which is like kind of like the third step of this process. The fourth step is then that information is sent to the victim. The victim then responds to that, thinking that they've received legitimate instructions, and then send those funds. And then the fifth step is that, once the funds are transferred to these accounts, And what we see a lot of times with these accounts is that some of them are set up for the purpose of fraud. So we'll have individuals that come to the United States or recruited here in the United States to open bank accounts using fraudulent identities to receive these frauds. We also see a large number of individuals that are being used as unwitting money mules. They're typically romance scam victims. And it's sad, especially today on Valentine's Day, to talk about the number of people who think they have found love online, only to have that love turned into being used as an instrument of money laundering. And so we see that, unfortunately, time and time again, where they meet somebody, they give them their account information, they are allegedly doing legitimate businesses overseas, but for whatever reason, their bank account here isn't working, so they'll allow them to transfer money into it, and they think that they are somehow assisting the person that they have fallen in love with, when instead they're being used to launder business email compromise schemes. I talked to one individual who, in a matter of days, received multiple business email compromise scheme wires into his account, and he was convinced that he was helping his fiance recover her inheritance, when in reality, he was just being used to launder money. So it makes it's a very multifaceted and multi-layered thing with because you have multiple scams going on, and the victims also multiple scams, which makes it difficult for investigations as well as for recovering money. And unfortunately, everyone is at risk. This doesn't matter if you're a large company or a small mom and pop shop, everyone is at risk. If you use email, you are unfortunately at risk of being part of a business email compromise scheme. Because every company is involved in these electronic transactions or communications, and you can have the best technology. You can be a huge company with the best IT support and the best firewalls, but the problem is that an individual is still the one receiving emails and responding to them, and the weakest link is our human error. And so we can be getting all this information, and that's why education is so important, and educating your employees to know what to look out for. And like Tanya mentioned earlier, if the CEO tells you we're not going to ask for gift cards, that's helpful, so that when you get an email asking, for gift cards, you're like, I've already heard of this, I know to be aware of it. But just a reminder that unfortunately everyone can fall victim to BECs and needs to be on their guard. And like we said, these are a major threat to the economy, and they have a significant impact. Whether it's loss of jobs, because some of these wires can just devastate companies and have an impact on so many different aspects of the operations and moving forward. So there's just all kinds of ways that this impacts the economy and individuals.
Steve, do you have anything to add to this slide? Steve, we're not hearing you.
All right, so this slide here talks about the enterprise business model. And unfortunately, business email compromise schemes and fraud schemes in general are a way of life for some people, for scammers, and they operate them as if they are actual businesses. You have your top level, your C-suite individuals who will target businesses, and so you've got all these different little facets that compose either the, like an actual company, where you have vendors, you'll have your individuals, like the IT section that carries out the hacking and the malware and the email monitoring. What we see oftentimes is that they will be in the email inboxes, monitoring that until there's an invoice or something that's alerts them that, hey, we're getting ready to have wire transfer, let's be involved in this. With those emails as well, they'll set up rules typically, and I think we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the presentation as well. But just touch on it briefly here, that there's these rules that they will set up, and they can set up keywords. So when wire or ACH or, there's certain key terms, bank information, when those are part of an email, they can forward that email unbeknownst to, the account holder of the inbox to the scammer. So when you see these cyber actors will typically set up emails and communication inside of them to alert them that a transaction may be coming.
And then they usually set up auto delete on top of
yes,
it, right?
Yeah. And so, yeah.
And really, this is an opportunity for the audience to understand what you're battling. This is not folks in your, bad 2 or 3 bad guys in your basement. They're supremely organized. They reinvest into their business model. If you just take a look at the slide itself, it really depicts, the strength and the willingness for them to continue to exploit and steal money from the good guys, folks like you guys on the line.
I was fascinated when you showed this slide in December of the burn party, right? At the end, right? Burn it all down after they've done their damage, right? And to cover their tracks.
Yeah, we see that so often. We'll see that, we'll see accounts that are deleted. So we'll see maybe there's like a Gmail account that, the email are forwarded to or something. And then we'll see, the deletion date is, shortly after that BC when we, get legal process on that. And we'll see like logs have been deleted. They'll go in and delete the rules that they were using to track you. So the only way you would have any sort of knowledge of it is if you keep those logs. So I'll just put a plug in for that as well here. Keeping activity logs, IP logs, all kinds of all those like unified audit logs for a company for as long as possible is very helpful, because a lot of times they can be in an inbox and monitoring it for months before the scheme actually, the wire transfer actually happens. And if you're only keeping logs for 7 days or 30 days, it can be difficult to, backtrack and identify when the intrusion actually occurred, or, what those indicators of compromise are.
The key takeaway from the slide, though, is the fact that it's so important for you to realize what you're up against. So having an incident response plan, an incident response team, knowing what resources the bad guys have and the strength in numbers. So that's really what this slide is here to emphasize. Steve, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so coming in on this slide here about the burn party. One thing we really want to stress is the efficiency and economical nature of these bad actors. This enterprise business model here, to really go out and set up a BEC enterprise, you can really do it in approximately $250 to buy all the tools you may need to pull one of these off. In the summer of 2020, in the throes of COVID, we saw a stark decrease in BEC activity that was reported to us at the Secret Service. We thought, hey, this is a good thing. Maybe we're actually putting a dent into this thing. Well, it turns out that wasn't the case. It turns out our bad actors had decided to do sort of their idea of a burn party and pivot to unemployment insurance fraud and SBA loan fraud. So that was great. But, in the fall of 2020 and spring of 2021, the BEC numbers shot up and skyrocketed because all the bad actors pivoted from the UI and PPP loan fraud back to BEC. You want me to take over from here?
Yeah, Steve, keep going.
All right, cool. I'm on slide 7, so if you can get that to there, and I'll just direct you guys to change the slides. So how are these guys really pulling off these schemes? The one thing I want to stress here, and I want to talk about what we're going to see in 2023, is the industrialization of business email compromise. Now, a lot of you really know how this playbook occurs, right? Our bad actors infiltrate an email account, they get in, and they figure out how to get that good information and use it against you. I call it harvesting and obtaining contemporaneous and privileged information. Well, how are they getting it, right? First, they're getting to email accounts through various ways. Most popular probably is phishing. Other ways they do it, they just comb and harvest prior data breaches and see if they can get into email accounts that way using pre-existing username and passwords. So there's multiple ways they're trying to pull this off. But once they get in, they all do the same thing. We all find the same tactic they use, is that they go right into your email filters, and they set up email rules to auto forward out emails and then delete anything that was auto forwarded out to essentially hide their tracks. So this is all happening in the background. You are not seeing this actively happen in your email inbox. In fact, the only way you can really detect it is if you know or think to regularly go and check, hey, I need to check my email rules or my auto filters to see if anything odd has been set up. So with that in mind, as these emails come in, they're getting very particular about what they want to look at. So, you get 1,000 emails a day, they don't care about every email. They want to focus and fine tune that down to words with finance, wire transfer, accounts, invoice, something like that will have good proprietary financial information that they can then use to launch an attack. And really with email rules, one thing I like to stress is, I've had victims tell me straight up, I change my password every 2 weeks. We're very, very vigilant with that. But how did this happen? And the thing with email rules is that they remain active even if the password's changed. So you really have to know to go in there and look and see if those email rules do exist. All right, so next slide, if we can. So the next slide here, we should be on slide 8. This is an actual phishing attack. And I know with Cofense, you guys are very well aware of these phishing attacks that are out there. Shout out to Ronnie Tokazowski. I spent a lot of time working with him. I oftentimes refer to him as my second wife because sometimes in a day I'll talk to him more than my actual wife. So shout out to iHeart Malware and Mr. Ronnie Tokazowski. But this is the phishing attack that we saw last summer. It came into a victim's email inbox. He was acting pretty quickly, wanted to get stuff done. He clicked the read message here. So you hit next slide. So after clicking read message, our victim was, are we on the Outlook?
Yeah, we're on it.
Here? Perfect. It brought the victim here. He was prompted to put in his email address. He hit next. And then the next screen prompted him to put in his password, and he hit next. What happened? Nothing happened, guys. It just went and spun and spun and spun. So ultimately, he got a 404 or a timeout. And he thought to himself, oh, maybe the network's down. I'll try again later. But what actually happened in the background was the bad actor had received the email address and password because it was broadcast to him. So immediately from there, the bad actor went and logged into the victim's email account. And if you hit next slide, he went right here to the email rules. He got very creative with the email rule. In one instance, I went out and talked to the victim, and I asked them, hey, do you have audit log set up? And they're like, no, we don't have that set up. I'm like, okay, well, give me the account you think has been compromised. So I go in and look. I see 136 separate email rules had been set up in that email account. And what were the email rules for? They were to redirect emails from specific clients that they were doing business with and had invoices with. So instead of it going to the actual accounts receivable inbox, it was being forwarded to a separate email inbox that was set up. It was, accountsreceivable.company@gmail.com was the tactic they used. So now all the email invoices that were due for this company were now being sent to an email inbox, all to the tune of about 136 of them. What did this result in? This resulted in a lot of BEC activity. The BEC activity was immense when we saw this. But again, when I had this talk with the victim, they said the same thing. Our email addresses are all current, all our passwords are good, but then looking back and seeing these email threads, they had been compromised for over a year of leaked invoices, and our bad actors just waited. They could have hopped on ones that were worth $13,000, $15,000, but they didn't. They waited until they started seeing the $100,000 invoices and then hopped on it much later. All right, so the next slide here, this is another attack. This is on the incoming attack. So this is after there's a compromise. The information that our bad actors want is now in their hands. So in this case, this was actually one that was used in a real estate closing. So the bad actors had gotten in, compromised the title company's email accounts, intercepted email traffic about a closing coming up for a person's home. Well, what the bad actor did was they had all of those emails that were forwarded to them, and they went and copied and pasted a prior thread of 17 different emails into one email. So it looked like all one continuous conversation. And then they even, if you see this here, thanks for the heads up. They actually gave validation to the victim that, hey, I'm the one you're talking to. We're referencing stuff in the prior email, so to them it looks 100% normal. They have full trust. The one thing they didn't do is our bad actors used what's known as a display name tactic, and they also set up a spoofed email address that was one letter off from the title company. So if you can see here, I do a little highlight red flag. There's a second T in the middle of the word title. So they use a display name masking where it showed the actual closer's name at the spoofed email account, and there, boom, that's your red flag. Then here they lay it out, attached the wire instructions there. Our victim printed it out, went to the bank, and boom, the bank said, oh yeah, that's the letterhead of the title company. We've dealt with them before. Let's wire out your $200,000. Unfortunately, the account in that wire transfer instructions was fraudulent. So this
Steve,
is their
really
playbook,
what you're saying, hey Steve,
Go ahead.
so really what you're
Yes.
saying is that a lot of the red flags that used to be maybe 2-3 years ago, i.e. the grammar and everything, they've really matured in that aspect. So being able to identify the bad grammar, the language, it's really become more personal, much like the romance scams and everything.
Exactly, Mike. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because really I want to focus on here is the industrialization of fraud, guys. What you're seeing here is, your standard BEC playbook from soup to nuts with the, phishing attack, getting in, setting the rules, and sending the attack email, right? They always have, these little red flags, these little things that are odd, particularly with the grammar. But in 2023, we're really going to see that go away because our guys are getting a lot better. Can you go to the next slide? So are we on slide 12?
Technical applications, industrialization of fraud.
Perfect. Thank you. So, guys, we're seeing them really get into this space using things to make their attacks so much better and so much more polished. A few things we're starting to see here, and we think we're going to see in 2023, ChatGPT, which I'm going to actually walk through of how they can craft their attack emails here in the next couple slides. Spoof card, callback spoofing, stuff like that. So here's really interesting. Here, what they're doing is they're inserting phone numbers for you to call to verify, where they're even saying, hey, here are the new wire instructions. Please call me to verify these. And they are using spoof card, which you can actually change your name to be a man or a woman. So if the closer is a woman, you can have it switch to be the closer. You can even have it add background noise. So you can say, hey, call me real quick. I'm in a crowded space, but I'll try to respond. So now it's, you want to rush, you got to get through it. You're not going to hear things as well because they can add all this stuff. We're also seeing SIM swaps arrive, not only in the BEC world, but the world in general. I mean, this has always been a thing here, but it's definitely becoming more and more prevalent because you can just go, this is simswap.ru, buy and sign up for this software, download it, activate it, and then boom, take over somebody's phone from there. So not only are we seeing them spoof title agents and other people in BEC, they could fully take over their phone itself. So even if you think you're calling that trusted individual, they may have pulled simswap.ru on you, and now they're moving it that way. We are seeing deepfakes, particularly with voice replication. So they'll say, hey, let's do a Zoom call, and the video will be messed up, similar to kind of what I'm doing now. I'm in Africa, my internet's not as good, so let's just do a Zoom call, but it's just going to be my voice, and they could use deepfakes and AI technology there to get confirmation. And then phone snatching syndicates. So this is just an alarming thing we're seeing. We want everybody to be aware of this. When we see phones get stolen from people, you used to see, you leave your phone in your car, somebody breaks in your car and steals your phone. They were selling that device for profit. Now, that's not necessarily the case. We're actually seeing phones being stolen from people within an hour, banking apps being accessed, and money being drained from bank accounts, or the phone being used for other nefarious purposes because they're able to crack into the phones. We can't confirm what technology they are using right now, but essentially once they get a hold of the phone, they can get through all of the encryption, all the passwords, get into your banking apps, get into your email accounts, and use that to carry out BEC style or other account takeover related attacks. So we're really starting to see, guys, the technological applications to BEC and cyber fraud in general in 2023. And again, I talked about the cost of entry and the ROI on BEC. This is, again, why it's so important to really have a defense against BEC and have the fight against it. You can get in for pennies on the dollar, roughly maybe, like I said, $250 to set up good infrastructure to get some of these technologies. And then your average BEC averages about $130,000 about $130,000 per incident. it's nuts. In the JIOC here, we've stopped $279 million as of today. And when we go back and look and average that out, it's about $850,000 an incident or recovery that we do. So, you're looking at extensive loss across the board, and they can get bigger, badder, and meaner with this technology. And just real quick, as we round out, I want to walk through actually how ChatGPT can be used to write BEC attack emails and really get rid of those red flags. So if you can hit next slide, to slide 13.
On it.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So simply, I went into ChatGPT, I signed up for it, and I did this. I write an email instructing the receiver to change a bank account to send funds for an invoice payment. Instantly, I have ChatGPT develop this email for me. The grammar is perfect. It will have all the information I need, perfect. And one thing I like to point out in this email address, when you guys see your attack emails that contain financial information, I'd say 85 to 90% of our bad actors don't understand what the word routing is. Instead of routing number, they will put routine number. And I say that to everybody. If you see the word routine number in any email, consider it a BEC attack and fraud. Well, with ChatGPT, that corrects that. That problem isn't in there anymore. So now, you get this well-worded email with all the information. It looks good to you. You could even say, hey, to confirm, please call my phone. And they use the spoof card or SIM swap or another technology. And boom, everything's buttoned up there for them to watch this attack and to be as polished as possible. So pretty scary. And actually what's fun with this, when I was researching this, I was talking to another security expert, and I was just getting fun with it. You can get very, very granular with this. I actually said in one of them, write an email using Midwest vernacular in a friendly means to ask him to switch a bank account. And it said, instead of dear receivers' names, it said, howdy, Tom, because I was using the name Tom. And it was very, hey, man, things are going well on this side. Can you just send the funds to this new bank account? And it did it. It looked incredibly scary that it can, you can say the word Midwest vernacular, and it will turn out an email in that phrasing. So that's how kind of good these are getting, and it's free. It didn't cost me anything. I went, opened up a trial account, put this in, and literally I'd say within 3.5 minutes, I had multiple of these transcribed out that I could just copy and paste it in the emails and launch them off at scale. Now, imagine you have not just one person doing these, but you have an almost boiler room style operation, which we're seeing, that they're just launching these out. And like I said, $130,000 per loss per incident. You get a couple of these going a day or a week, and you're making good money, and you're hurting U.S. businesses and individuals. So I want to show you one more.
Talk real quickly about the down payment to crypto using ChatGPT.
Yep. So that's where we are. So if you hit next slide. So, again, to really embrace 2023 and technology. So with BEC, with the recovery we do, in the JIOC, we have our rapid response team that we're going to talk about here in a second. But we used to have a good 48 hours really to locate funds, stop bank accounts, get money back. Now our bad actors are definitely very much using and embracing cryptocurrency because it's taking out a lot of the traditional money laundering hops that they prior needed to get the money around the world and back in their hands. Now they can just have it go to a crypto wallet. And so right here, same thing. I literally went into ChatGPT and I said, draft an email to change down payment from a bank account to cryptocurrency wallet. And boom, they even put in an explanation, due to increased demand and accessibility, our company has decided to accept payment in cryptocurrency. I mean, that was unprompted by me. Literally, I just put in the prompt up top and it went and churned out this email. So pretty damn easy to get these going and make them look good. All right. So, we want to put out there, we hope nobody falls victim to BEC. If you guys can go to slide 15, that'd be great. We really want everybody to be aware. We don't want BEC to happen, but God forbid if one does. This is sort of the roadmap that you have to follow. Abby touched upon this earlier, guys. Time is money with BEC. As I said, we used to have that 48-hour window to get BEC funds back. Now we're down to 12. Usually as soon as the bank's open or as soon as that money is accessible by our bad actors, whether it's a witting money mule or unwitting money mule, it's being moved very quickly now because the criminal actors know that we can get after it, the banks can stop it, so they try to move it as quickly as possible to obfuscate what happened. So first things first, have your victim contact their bank immediately and say, hey, this was fraudulent. We just found out about it. Can you please send a wire recall? Please do that, because the banks can work as quickly as possible between the banks, hopefully, to get funds back. We also recommend right after that is to move communications out of band or to alternate communications. What does that mean? That means don't use your email addresses that you believe may be compromised, because you don't know where your bad actors are sitting. Sort of funny story, not funny, a little scary actually. So I was working at BEC and I was talking to a bank investigator, and the bank investigator called me and he's like, hey man, that account you sent over, it just got $1.3 million in what looks like a BEC. I'm like, interesting. Okay. Can you tell me who sent the wire? He gave me a little snippet of the wire. So I tried to figure out who sent it. It ended up being a commercial advertiser in the South, and they had sent the money that they're buying a new property for their office. And so I start cold calling this company. I'm getting nowhere. I was able to figure out, just by doing research, the way the email addresses were set up. And so I just start emailing who I think are, the manager, the CFO, CEO, whoever I could, to get them to call me back saying, hey, I think I found some of your money based on a BEC scheme. And eventually we got it all sorted. They ended up calling the Secret Service field office. They confirmed who I was, and I talked to them. In the meantime, though, they actually started getting secondary emails from the scammer saying that me, Stephen Doherty from the Secret Service, is actually a fraudster and to not listen to me as I'm talking to them. So what happened was, in one of those emails that I essentially cold sent to one of the email addresses, got picked up in a compromised email account, and the fraudster got it. So it's really important to move and have an out-of-band communication established, whether that's, a separate spin-up, just, one-off Gmail, Yahoo accounts, move to text messaging, move to another chat platform such as Signal or Slack, what have you. Whatever you can do, get away from your email accounts when you believe there may be a BEC going around. Next, contact the U.S. Secret Service. You can contact a couple different components that we have. We strongly encourage you to contact our field offices, which can be reached right here, secretservice.gov/contact/field offices. We have 24-hour duty desks in those offices that are manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they should be able to help you and start getting you recovered from the BEC. You can also contact, if you discover upon this immediately and funds were just sent and you need a rapid response, you can reach out to the BEC desk as well. Like I said, I actually wrote this last week, and over the weekend, much to Abby's hard work, we ended up getting back another close to $5 million in a recovery, and it was amazing work by Abby to do so. So now we're actually up to about $279 million in recovered funds. We really encourage you guys to file a complaint at ic3.gov. ic3.gov, they get a lot of complaints, but it's great for staff purposes. It's great for tracking and case deconfliction. So please file an ic3.gov complaint, and make sure you save that once you file it. You can provide it to us, or you can provide it to the local police if you're talking with them. It's always good to have that piece of paper in hand that the report was filed. Next, also you can file a FTC Consumer Sentinel complaint as well. They track these too and have a little more of a business side leaning aspect to them. So please file that too. After that, we recommend you consult with either your internal or a third-party IT service to locate and mitigate any compromises. This also may come along with, if you do have cyber insurance, this may be a step that they recommend as well, and they have that service available to you. And then obviously make vendor, client, and third-party notifications if needed, because as I said before, with that one example of the 136 different email rules that were set up, that was 136 different clients involved in that. And that company failed to make notification for about a year. And again, 136 different companies were at victim, because a lot of times, guys, with BEC, and I stress this enough, you have two victims. You have the financial side victim, the one who loses money, and then you'll have the compromised victim, the one who has the email account compromised going on in their system. So you really need to look out for one another if one of these does occur, or if you pick up on one, you need to make the notifications as well. I understand, with your companies, you need to check with your general counsel and what have you, but you need to really make those notifications. So that's the roadmap if one of these does happen to you. So screenshot this or take a picture of it and keep it handy if you guys need it.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. And we're just going to run through really quick kind of the outreach aspect of this. You see on the screen here, these are 42 cyber fraud task forces that we have located throughout the continental United States. as it relates to kind of the key takeaways from Abby and Steve's great presentation today. We're emphasizing for you to develop a trusted federal law enforcement partnership. And hopefully that trusted law enforcement partnership is with the Secret Service. But if it's not, it's with the FBI or whomever. We urge you as corporations and executives to go out and develop that partnership prior to an incident occurring. I think you guys have, we've displayed to you enough factual information today to understand that time is of the essence, and the need to have a trusted partnership with federal law enforcement, to have a practice incident response plan, and to know who's on that incident response team and what responsibilities they have is paramount in order for you to recover your funds and bring attribution to the bad guys. As Steve talked about a little bit ago, if you are a victim of business email compromise and you're going through the incident, make sure that you're not using your compromised channels of communication. The old adage of 72 hours is the time that we have, or the corporation has, in order to report. That's really gone out the window, especially with the evolution of cryptocurrency. We're seeing at 24 hours about a 61% success rate, 48 hours. When we get up to beyond 72 hours, I think it's less than 2%. Notice the financial kill chain is initiated at 72 hours or less. And we ask that you report BECs, and I understand you have brand reputational risk here, but you report BEC because I think Steve and Abby can both speak to different occurrences where somebody reported a BEC, and ultimately Steve or Abby or somebody here at our Global Investigative Operations Center was able to take that information, the account information, and stop or thwart 2 or 3 other BEC attempts, because a lot of times what they'll do is it'll go out on a thread going to one bad guy account, and then at that account you might see 3 or 4 BECs come in.
And I would say even report attempts as well, because like if you get fraudulent wire instructions and you do your due diligence and don't send the money, still report that attempt, because we've been able to tie that same bank account then that other people have been getting that bank account as fraudulent instructions and sending money. And so it proactively helps us kind of identify fraudulent accounts and common like emails or other factors that are involved that help us kind of tie all these together and back to a single bad actor.
I think somebody was asking in the chat already, I happen to see it, who should we call, the FBI, the Secret Service? It goes back to the trusted partnership. I would develop a trusted partnership with one of us and have that trusted partnership prior to an incident occurring. Just like you do business with somebody that's trusted, you're not going to give them money. You should be doing the same thing with your trusted law enforcement partners. The FBI and us, we have a great relationship. There's no competing field in this area. So whoever that trusted partnership may be, hopefully it's with the Secret Service, but our urge is for you to develop that trusted partnership. It gives you the best ability, your executives, your board, general counsel, etc., the best avenue in resources in order to recoup your funds and bring attribution to the bad actors. So key takeaways, I think Steve's covered a lot of this. Again, we're emphasizing, and here's one other thing. For those of you that are doing tabletop exercises, one, I think it's paramount that you do the tabletop exercises and you involve those internal stakeholders that are actually making the decisions, so you understand how different lines of business are affected by different decisions, and then you can scope your plan accordingly. But more importantly, that you've actually practiced it in a setting, and then you have a better idea of maybe some of the roadblocks you're going to hit. But if you're not comfortable with allowing law enforcement, Secret Service to sit during the entirety, involve them just in the part of, hey, we're going to call the Secret Service in our tabletop exercise let's see what they're going to do. Maybe some of the issues that your general counsel, your executives, your chief operating officer may have, a lot of those questions or concerns can be answered during those tabletop exercises. So I think at this point, we're going to turn it back over to Tanya.
Yeah.
And we'll begin our Q&A. So thanks a lot, Tanya, for this opportunity. This was great.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here. So I do want to make a comment quickly because I know, Abigail, you talked about how you've seen several of the same. So I was actually looking at some of our Phishing Defense Center data, and I saw that one email account across 7 different customers, and I'm seeing multiples of those, which I'm going to highlight in our annual report coming up next month. But yeah, so report those things. Also, I always recommend, like, if you can disable auto forwarding rules, that will save you, right? So, and maybe you have some business processes. I know it was one of the very first things I did when I took over the CISO role is disabling that auto forwarding. But then I found out that I have some systems that used it. So then we were able to just limit it to those business processes that needed it, but not to individuals, right? So as much as you can mitigate that, disable that. And then when you have a credential phish, go look to see, are the rules set up right? Because maybe in that instance of changing that password, right, that we're able to do that. Let me see. You mentioned a few things about the dollar amount. Is there a limitation that you guys have as far as when somebody reports to you of when you'll, what amount you would research or go after?
Absolutely not. Just as we just spoke about, even if you report, there's many instances where that report has led to actually the saving of your peers within your industry or other industries. Where that either email or that bank account is being utilized in the same way for, let's say, 9 or 10 other BECs that are ongoing. So it may not directly affect you. You're ahead of the game, but you might be saving some of your peers in the industry.
So what I often say, so I have a finance background in my early career, and when I first started seeing these back when Ronnie and I chatted in 2015 or earlier, these are business processes that are being averted, right? So at the end of the day, work with your finance teams and your accounts payable, your accounts receivable, how you can put processes in place, right, to look for these things. How do you mitigate these? I had talked to a CISO who was really struggling with, okay, how can I fix this with technology? Because he lost money, right? And so he lost money and then decided, I'm putting a 3-day hold on any bank account changes because I want you to verify, because the threat actors literally put up a spoofed web page, right? Everything that we kind of went through in all of those examples, where he instituted a process, the CISO, right, on the finance team, right, when it really isn't really a cybersecurity issue, it's really a business process issue, but there's things that we have to work together with the business on, and this is one of those great examples of that. I know you guys are sitting on the edge of your seat to say something, and then I'll look through these questions here.
So the only thing I'm going to add, and I'll turn it over to Steve and Abby, is 91% is right around the number that we hear that this is human error. You can have the best technology, set up the best fort, the best defenses, the best security, but ultimately it's an individual that majority of the time either not through due diligence or whatever it may be, accident that causes the incident, and that's outside of BEC. So what I would say is I'd urge those on the call to develop a culture that strengthens and enables your employees, especially your frontline employees, to report. It's difficult, right? Because it's training. But much like you're doing here, you're attending this, education and awareness on this, come up with easy ways to train your employees so that they're more willing and wanting to report these type of incidents.
Yeah, I think that, the education component is just so critical. And again, like recognizing that calling a verified individual, a lot of times you'll get an email and they may change the phone number in the signature line. Everything looks the same. Don't call the number. If you're on your phone, you just click on the number and call them. Call a verified person because I've worked one case where the individual got an email. They questioned it, like, this looks suspicious. They attached it to a different email and sent a new email to a different person. But again, the whole account, the whole company had been compromised. And so they thought they were doing their part with checking, but that account had also been compromised. And so you have to, speak to someone on the phone that you know and trust, and just don't fall for these changing wire transactions.
And speaking to that too, and Steve can jump in here as well, but the stress of offline communications, they will sit inside and they will start answering some of the emails when you start to realize that you're involved in an incident. That's how crafty they are.
Yeah.
So understand that they're going to hit you from both sides. They're going to reassure you that, no, don't worry about it. Or, I think that was a glitch or an error. Let's continue in the process. That's why it's important, if you do think you're a victim of an incident, that you have offline communications that are separate, in a separate system, to be able to communicate, to verify and continue the process.
So we've had a few questions come in related to SMS. So what should we do about the SMS text? When we get them over text, right? It's hard. You can't really forward it that like you can an email off to your security team. I know some, for our Phishing Defense Center customers, we always recommend that they attach it in an email and send it off, right? So we can at least track that phone number. We talked a little bit about them spoofing or SIM swapping. I know that some of the providers now, like I know Verizon, I'm pretty sure AT&T does, where you can lock your SIM, but that only protects your phone number from getting used, right? So looks like Steve dropped off. Mike, I don't know if you were expecting him to pipe in some of these answers. So I don't know, what's your recommendation when it comes to the SMS messages?
Yeah, with the SMS, it's really a hard one. People, they use VoIP numbers a lot of times to send these out, and the numbers change constantly. And, obviously reporting them, because what we'll do is like when we're building an investigation or a case and we're trying to like put things together, like we'll, search databases for these numbers and say, oh, look, this popped up, 74 other times it has been reported, and we can then kind of like start putting things together. So again, I can't stress enough education and reporting. Like the reporting aspect of it, it's like IC3. I know a lot of people will go to their locals. Locals don't always know what to do with some of these. So like reporting to a federal agency, whether it's through the FTC, through the Secret Service, through the IC3.gov, just like reporting information allows us to kind of build cases. And eventually someone makes a mistake. These bad actors, like they're good, but they're not always perfect. So if we can get enough data points together, as far as that, but like a screenshot of it with the number as well.
Go old school and go have a cup of coffee with your local Secret Service agent.
Okay,
and I mean that honestly.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we did have several questions of how do we establish that relationship, right? Like, can you just walk up to the FBI or Secret Service office and say, hey, I want to meet with who's my local representative? I know I've been at some of your events, right? And there's people who can at least connect you to somebody, right? Even if, I don't know, can you email them, call them? Like, how do you start that conversation?
So we have 42 cyber fraud task forces around the country. So geographically, there should be an office within your AOR or your, area where your corporation is HQ'd or where you work. We'll be able to send out those resources to you, Tanya, if you can feed those to.
Yeah, we're happy. You know what? We'll post it on the BEC site, right? Because I think that's a good place to at least get people information or where to start, right? Some people just need a direction of where do I start?
Sure. So our cyber fraud task forces at these 42 locations, this is a culmination of a bunch of private sector partners, along with federal partners and along with SLTT, state, local, tribal, and territorial. So it's a culmination of all your federal resources, along with those that are members from the private sector community, those corporations. It's a great way to exchange information. They have quarterly, biannual meetings at the CFTFs. And it's really a good way to develop your Rolodex as it relates to, I have an issue, who can I call? Not only can I call my Secret Service, my local Secret Service CFTF, I'll be able to call, Mike Johns from company ABC, who just went through this maybe, or I just remembered Mike talking about a certain incident that seems similar to ours. Maybe I can pick up on pathways forward here. So be happy to share those contact information
that would be
along with
great.
some other resources. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we have a lot of global customers, and so I'm curious what your footprint is across the globe. I mean, I've been very happy that we've seen some actual cases of takedowns, right, because of all the work that you guys are doing. So it's great to see prosecutions happening. But for our global customers who might be experiencing this across the globe, I'm assuming you have some networks that you also work with?
Absolutely. I mean, Steve's joining us from Pretoria, South Africa today. So,
Yeah.
But remember this: this crime is not, it's not indicative of the 48 states, United States. So it quickly moves overseas, especially with the evolution of cryptocurrency. It might be 2 hops that it gets overseas. So I'll let Abby speak to kind of what she's seeing from that angle.
Yeah, for sure. This affects everybody. It's not just businesses here in the United States, and we have businesses that are, located here that do business with others internationally, and, they could be at risk for all of it. And so like our goal, obviously, we have, 2 main goals. That's to recover money for victims, and then, to make victims whole through service of justice, through prosecution. And so like we've got offices across the world as well. And we've got partnerships with different law enforcement agencies in other countries as well. And then we can work with Vincent to kind of broaden that as far as like trying to do like kill chain and retrieve money on behalf of victims. And again, like if you are operating globally and internationally, and you have a company that's based overseas, they can file these IC3 complaints too. And so, like, again, reporting and education and contacting law enforcement as soon as possible, regardless, like local law enforcement. And if you've got a component, here, the federal aspect of it, just because the sooner we can get involved, the sooner that we can start taking steps to try to recover money and identify those indicators of compromise.
We, the Secret Service.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate having you guys today, and maybe we might have to have you back again and just do Q&A, right? Because I think we could talk for hours around all of these questions. And so if we didn't get to your question today, we will absolutely get back to you via email, work with the team to get you those responses. We've had people asking for the slide deck, so we don't hand out slides afterwards, but we do have the link so you can replay this. So if you want to share it with your colleagues, or even some of your, if you service small businesses and you think it's important for them to hear this message, absolutely they should hear this message. Get that link off to them. And so we'll get back to that. And I think, Christy, you're going to wrap us up here because we are at the top of the hour. But thank you guys again for joining us.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah, thank you all for such an informative and really engaging discussion. A lot of questions coming in. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today. If you haven't yet, check out the resources we've left on the right-hand side of your console. As Tanya mentioned, if we weren't able to get to your question, we'll follow up with you directly with an answer. And yeah, that about covers it. So again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you again, Tanya, Michael, Abigail, and Stephen, for sharing such great insights today. And we hope to see you all for our next webinar. And in the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.